A topic that can be a little confusing at the start for advanced algebra students is imaginary numbers, and more generally, complex numbers. Sometimes problems require us to take the square root of -1. We call this number I. If this feels fake or artificial to you, remember you probably felt the same way about negative numbers the first time they were introduced to you. We can take the square root of other negative numbers in the same way. So the square root of -9 is 3i. An important property of imaginary numbers is that since the square root of -1 equals I, if we square both sides of that equation, we can see that I squared equals -1. Complex numbers have a real and imaginary part. Their general format is a plus bi, where a is the real part and b is the imaginary part. Let's say we are asked to multiply these two complex numbers together. By multiplying the first, outer, inner, and last terms, or foiling, we get a plus 4i minus 12i minus 6i squared. 4i minus 12i is -8i, but also remember that I squared equals -1. That means we'll have a plus 6 at the end of our expression. Combine that with the 8 to get 14 minus 8i. Another common problem with complex numbers is rationalizing. It's a rule of math that we can't have square roots in a denominator, and I is the square root of -1. The easiest way to eliminate the I in the denominator is to multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate, which is the original denominator, but with a sign change on the imaginary part. From here, the simplifying works just as it did when we multiplied complex numbers before. Now let's take a look at complex numbers on a graphing calculator. You'll want to start by putting your TI-Nspire into complex mode. Press the Dock button. Within the menu that appears, select Settings and Status, then Settings, and finally General. Under Real or Complex, select Rectangular. This will allow the square root of a negative to appear in the a plus bi format explained earlier. Check to make sure you set the calculator's mode correctly by taking the square root of -9. You should see 3i. Next, we'll multiply two complex numbers together. If you have a TI-Nspire touchpad, you can select the pi button, which will actually bring up several math symbols, including I. Although multiplying two complex numbers together by hand isn't usually that time-consuming, your Nspire can multiply many complex numbers together at once, and you can even raise complex numbers to larger exponents. If you want to rationalize a complex number, it's very easy. Just select the fraction feature by pressing Control and Divide and input your complex fraction. In this case, 1 over 2 minus I. You'll notice the Nspire does all the rationalizing for us and gives us the answer in fraction form.